Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cope Life Podcast interview series. I'm Charleston Gaines, your emotional intelligence life coach, podcast host, speaker, and I'm excited to be here. And the reason I'm excited to be here is because of Donnie. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, but she is absolutely amazing. And I feel like it's just a privilege, right? Like, I'm the lucky one who gets to interview her. And everyone that's watching, if you're watching in the replay, you'll see that she is really someone that really just has this grit, this perseverance that we should all have, And you don't have to believe me; you'll hear her story, and we're gonna go ahead and jump right in. So, hello, good morning, Donnie. It's the morning for you. It's the afternoon for me. I'm in Florida. Let's just jump right in. Why don't you tell me about yourself? Who are you really?
Hi, Charleston. Hi, everybody. I say I'm a product in the making, trying to build my brand, working on what I want to achieve, what are my goals, what makes me happy, what have I learned in the past, living through life with culture, abuse, and trauma, and what I've learned since my son committed suicide. Um, Try to helping others and being real. I may say some foul language and don't mean to, but it's who I am. So I want to be very mindful. And so I welcome every question that you have for me. Um, I grew up in a multicultural family. My family was I was born in Honolulu, one of eight children, but from four different marriages. Um, and my mom divorced my dad, remarried my stepdad, and he was in the Navy. So we traveled everywhere, Maryland and Bremerton, and learned a lot and settled in California. He was from West Virginia. And so those are different cultures in itself. And we learned to eat foods like spam and rice. And my mom used to we used to watch TV, watching the scary movies on the floor, newspaper, and she'd make spam with syrup on top and mac and cheese and say, pretend it's ham. So, and so we lived on powdered milk, half milk, and also regular milk because when you live on a um, military salary, and my mom had the four kids, my two younger sisters, my brother, and me, and my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, lived with us. So, a lot of people to feed in there. So, we ate West Virginia food. We ate okra, fried okra. We had um, ham hocks and beans. We had fried green tomatoes. We had biscuits and gravy and fried rice, shoyu chicken, um, everything, that we had. We loved it, spaghetti, whatnot. And one type of food I didn't like was goulash, because we had that all the time. Didn't like it. It's like, oh God, but now I love it. So,
I love it. Love it. Just even from the beginning, from the very start, you're just as real as you can be, and talking about all of these different foods, all of these different cultures, and what I love, really, just you're starting off talking about the different foods you ate, but what you were eating was really a reflection of the different cultures, right? Socioeconomic status, and then the blended family. Um, and I smile when you said spam because of all the things I've done in life and everything I might do later, right? Maybe I'll win the lottery or something. Who knows? Spam fried rice is still a favorite. I
I love it too.
don't care what anyone says. That's how we are. Um, but what I wanted to get into, I mean, you talked a little bit about growing up, and you also mentioned your son. You mentioned a lot of things really quickly, and what I really want to do is just to hear your story. Like, Of all the things you've been through, tell us your story, however you want to tell it, whatever you want to focus on, and you can use whatever words you want because I just want you to be all the way you.
Well, I grew up with abuse and sexual abuse, although sometimes when growing up, I didn't remember some of the things. Although I admit that I had migraine headaches at age 7 and always stayed and looked in the mirror at 7 to see if I looked my best, which nobody told me that I needed to do that, but focusing on that. And um, so we had to learn before we moved to the mainland or California or United States, we had to learn to speak regular English, no pidgin English. We had to chew with our mouths closed to make sure we didn't sit with our legs apart so we looked, like a lady. We had to respect our elders. But when we came up here, um, we received a lot of racial attacks. Like we went to Long Beach, and I remember my mom. Um, they say, well, my brother and I went to school in Long Beach Elementary School, and they said, well, you can't. Um, they ignored us. Our teachers and our principal didn't want to speak to us. And my mom went up to the school, and she was very brave, Japanese woman, and um, she said, um, I'll just tell my husband we'll just withdraw from the school because you guys get funding from the military, federal government, and we'll just do that. But they changed after that. But it still leaves, mark, in your head, your psyche. You're not tall enough. You're not. Your eyes aren't brown. Your hair is not blonde. You don't have the same build as everybody else. Um, so people used to ask us, what part of us do you see if you see slanted eyes? I said, you know what? I'm focusing on the bottom half right now. They turn around and shut up. So, that way it shuts them up right away because I didn't want them to continue badgering. I felt that was badgering us. So I learned a lot. My mom was strict. Um, I was raped at 17 and um, abused by my son's father. Um, I was kidnapped and held hostage by my son's father as well. Um, so that taught me a lot. But it also taught me a way to cope and survive. How do I survive without wanting love from the opposite sex, or how do I want get love from my family? I tried a lot. I felt like I wasn't the best. Um, so I married 4 times, and my sons had asked me, "Why'd you do that?" I said that was the way we did it. So in order to do that, that's what I did. Because I worked 2, 3 jobs. I went to school and made sure that I had a man in the house. May not be the best man in the house at the time because they were abusive, and my kids saw that and didn't like it. So um, then I would, I wanted to make sure that I would achieve everything. So I went to junior college while I was working. From there, I went to what they had. It was Liberty University, and it was through video. They had um, videotapes that I saw, and I got my bachelor's of science. Then I went to National University and got my master's degree. And from there, I tried to go into the Walden program for um, the PhD program. I didn't finish my dissertation because at that time I was married to a third husband and he wanted a divorce in front. He said that in front of his daughter, which I was close to, and she cried. And so I just broke down. And so that was the same year that I lost my brother to um, drugs. It was the Vicks inhalers. At that time, they had them when you could take the stuff out of the Vicks inhalers and sniff them and eat them. And he died as a result of that. In fact, they had to take it to Virginia toxicology because they didn't know, what kind of drug it was. And then I lost my bio dad in, I want to say, February, March, and then my stepfather passed away in December of that year from um, lung cancer metastasizing in his brain. So that was a real wake up call
Okay,
for
so
me.
well, that's a man. You covered like you covered so much ground, and I just it makes me think of so many things, and I have so many questions for you. So one thing I wanted to ask you was really going back to your childhood, right? You mentioned um. Well, first of all, I'm just going to put this out there for everyone
Okay.
who may be watching. If you were going to watch live or the replay, um, we're real people and we got real emotions on here. So so you're gonna just see us be real, right? I don't fake anything. So if I get upset or if we shed some tears, that's kind of what we do sometimes as human beings. But I want to ask about you mentioned enduring abuse as a child, but you also mentioned a lot of the racism and the discrimination you went through in school from the other students. And then also, you said that your mom was brave, but she was also very strict. So my question to you is during this period of you maybe, late elementary school or early adolescence, how did you really feel about yourself, your self-worth, your value as a person?
I didn't feel good enough. I remember wearing my my sleeves down to my wrist when I was in high school because I felt like I had my hair was too dark and long on my on my arms. Um, and um, I remember one time we lived in Maryland, and my mom didn't want us to stay in the sun because it would get too dark. My dad, being Hawaiian, Chinese, and Irish, he looked more African American than anything. But I'm so proud of what he was, even though he was an abusive father as well. So learning through that, and um, somebody had put in my yearbook to a stuck-up bitch from Hawaii and didn't sign it. That was my senior year. That bothered me a lot. And I wanted to go with the popular girls, but they all were white, Caucasian. We didn't have a lot of ethnic groups going to our high school because everybody was this was Hilltop in Chula Vista. They were all upper crust. Um, Fathers were in the military, but they were like admirals or captains or senior chief, and some of them were policemen, and so it was totally different there too. And I did, receive some. If you weren't a cheerleader, or if you weren't coordinated enough, you didn't make it to the cheerleading squad, or you didn't make it to the oh, I forgot what they call it. They had like a drill team either, and so we didn't do that. And it was hard for me. So, um, did I answer your question?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and and truthfully, there's not gonna be a wrong answer, right? It's just you being honest and telling it, what it is. Um, but you talk about, I'll say this, a couple things that you've mentioned. You talked about abuse that you've endured, when you were younger. You talked about what happened in high school. You talked about abuse that you endured from your husbands. But every time that you talk about something that you had to endure, and not just, a migraine or something, but like really traumatic situations, you always speak on it as it taught you something. You're always speaking on what you learned from the situation. And I absolutely love that. Right. So when you say that you were abused by someone, you don't then immediately go into talking about how bad life was as a victim or whatever. You follow that up by saying, and I learned a lot, and it taught me a lot, and I admire that, and I want to bring that up because I don't know how many people watching this are going to actually pick up on that, because we say all the time, right? You either win or you learn. You don't fail, you learn from the situation. But a lot of times when people talk about that, they're not talking about abuse, right? They're talking about, something that happened in school or something that happened at their job. But this is your real life. This is the most intimate parts of who you are as a person, your marriage. But you still had the mindset to learn from it, to grow. And I just wanted to bring that up because I admire that. I mean, that's a lesson. That in itself is an invaluable lesson for everyone who's watching, who's going to see this. Um, but then you talked about losing. Oh, so you're working on your dissertation, and then what happened was you lost your. I think you said your brother and your biological father and your stepdad. So for each of them, kind of what was your relationship like with them around that time where they passed away?
Um, when my bio dad passed away, he was an alcoholic and he was a womanizer, and he would brag a lot about his accomplishments and how he would have a girlfriend um, that was beautiful and young and half the age of my stepmom. It was very embarrassing. He smoked pot with her and talked about her endowment. So when he would send me a birthday card, it was so inappropriate. It was meant for a sexy girlfriend or something. And that, he always said, well, Donette, you still look chubby, or you still look this and you still look that, always on my shortcomings. He was abusive with my sisters, sexually abusive. He was abusive with his sons. Abusive. You're no good. Good for nothing. You don't work. Get out of here. Um, I don't love you. All the sons he did that. So all the daughters um, from my dad, we all end up going to college, and both of my sisters went to University of Hawaii because at that time, had I lived there and my dad wanted me to move there, we had some, we were able to go to school for free. And also now that I'm a part of the indigent migrant, um, the Hawaiian, they call it Hawaiian Aborigines of Hawaii, that I can send my card because I show that my birth certificate and how much Hawaiian I have, and send that information to my sons, and their families as well. So I'm proud of that. Um, so, but I learned about that with my bio dad. That's after he died. What happened? I was so ashamed and so in shock. I told my mom, and my mom said, "Did he do that to you?" I said, I don't know, other than him picking me up, and we would all wear for my first birthday. I remember wearing the Filipino dresses with the crinoline, and your skirts were really big, bigger than your whole body, kind of thing. We had to walk around in those things, and my mom said he used to take me and take me away um, in my diapers. That's all I had. So I don't remember any part of that other than being verbally abusive. That part bothered me. And so also growing up, I stayed with my grandmother, Obachan, and her name was Arayo Nakakuni, Kasai Nakakuni. She was my go-to. She was my mom. She was, and the history behind my mom and my grandmother was that my mom wasn't told that her sister was really her mom until she was 16 years old. And so they always had a love hate relationship. and that was hard. And I could understand how my mom felt, you know, because they would be angry. We heard a lot of fights in the house all the time, um, and everything. And so, um, and my mom wasn't the kind to show a lot of affection like my grandmother did. My grandmother, when I lived with her, I mean, she used to be a housekeeper for a senator in Hawaii, and I stayed in the little room that she had, and I remember having to sit in a tub in the corner of the bathroom, in the tub part, and could see cockroaches. They call them cockroaches go up and down the wall, and we'd see centipedes everywhere and lizards. And I had two birds, a canary, Mikey, and Ricky. Ricky used to go on my shoulder, so I have a love for animals, to the store and back. And my grandmother said I used to imitate disabled people. She goes, "You need to stop." And I was so clumsy from the get go. She'd be talking to me, and I would had tripped over like a crack in the sidewalk, which I still do. I trip because I don't see where I'm going. And so, and I really loved my clothes catalog. I guess that's why I'm a clothes hound. And so I would give the next morning, it was wrinkled. My grandmother ironed my catalog for me. She ironed that catalog. And at that time, I also had a rash on my arm, which I didn't know why I did. I was 5 years old. So it was like a stress anxiety thing that I had. But I would sing the song Que Sera Sera by Doris Day, whatever will be, and sang that a lot. So it made my world happy, and wrote little stories when I was younger because I really didn't have close friends growing up. We moved everywhere. And so we mostly had white friends when we were growing up, and um, we lived in Maryland. I also had a young friend that bullied me and kept me in the basement of the housing project. And I punched her in the stomach because she was like 5'10", and I was like, what, 4'10", 4'8". And so she cried and went to her parents. And my mom said, she needed to do that because she didn't want to be locked in the basement. So I guess just bringing that up, was a lot. We I guess I grew up from hard knocks and watching my mom suffer. And like I said, it was hard for her to hug us, but um, she would show her love by saying things like, I was 18 years old, and I was old enough, but I was sick. And she said, "Let me rub Vicks on your chest." I said, "Mom, I'm 18. I can do it myself." I think it was her way of saying to me, "I'm your mom, and let me do this for you." And um, some of the things she said also said, like, "You know what to do to satisfy your husband after you get married." I said, "I don't need to know that, Mom. Thank you." I said, "I should have known that before because nobody told me how you got pregnant at that time. I didn't know anything. Was in high school. Nobody told me about the birds and the bees. I didn't even know about what happened when I had my first period. So those are things I had to, and my mom always tried to be better than the Caucasian women, all the time, and felt like my dad was looking at somebody else, and she always felt inferior. And I guess I felt that with her as well. But one thing that she did teach me too, I was at, is how to dance the hula. But the way she taught me what I need to step on your knees. I said, why? Because to limber your knees. And today I had bad knees, okay? Because I was like 5, 6, or 7 years old, so that we could just like, be able to dance that way. So, but I miss her. I miss her for who she was. I miss her for what she taught me and what I learned from her. And I know I had a lot of anger for a long time because she was mean to my grandmother, and and she also said that she felt she wasn't good enough and for anybody either as far as so um, she wasn't skinny enough and she wasn't but she did brag about her 23-inch waist, which we never had. Us girls never had 23-inch waist. But she would always talk about her breasts aren't big enough, and so that I guess that like that comes down the chain of abuse kind of thing. But wasn't good enough, and um, yeah. So I think I lost my train of thought, and
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. I mean, you're just real and telling the truth, and I got to be honest. My truth is that, man, I just like to give you a hug. Just give you a
yeah.
hug and tell you that you're beautiful, and that so much of this is the external, right? It's what everyone else says. Other people are saying you should look like this or you should look like that. You're not tall enough. Too tall, too short, too big, too small, too everything. And it's all external. And you didn't have a lot of voices telling you that you are beautiful. And so a lot of times when we're looking at our own internal thoughts, if we haven't formulated those thoughts, we're just going to repeat what other people said, right? So if I haven't been able to assess my own intelligence, but everyone else calls me stupid, and then my self-talk is also going to be that I'm stupid. But even as you describe that, and to me this is just a recurring theme with you, even as you describe that, you there's bits of positivity in everything that you say, and I so feel it. I so feel it. I really do. You can say anything you want about what your mom did or didn't do right or whatever, but then you tell a story about what she taught you. You tell a story about what she did for you. And it's like you have this, it's just in your nature to notice the good things. It's in your nature to appreciate the little things. And again, that's why I keep saying you're such an example, because it's so hard for so many people when you're bombarded with all of this negative energy, all of these outside voices and this criticism. It's very easy to be consumed by that. And then that really encompasses your entire perspective on life, but you were still able to say, my mom did this and my mom did that and my grandmother did this for me. You're still able to see the positive. And that seems to be getting harder and harder to do for people who have not even experienced half of what you've experienced. So I mean, this is my recurring theme. I might say it 10 more times before we get out of here, but I admire you. You are a role model. So we got to the point. So you talked about having, um, you're going for your PhD. You didn't finish your dissertation. You talked about your son's, attitude towards you about certain things you did or didn't do. Your dad, your stepdad passed away, as well as your brother. So from that point in time in your life forward, like what happened next?
well, my I called my sister Darcy, my youngest sister, and I said, "Come pick me up." And she took me in her arms and took me because I was lost. I didn't know where to go because um, I had to find another place to stay. And I was working at um, Camp Pendleton. I worked for 9 years. I worked as a stock manager and also as a tech support, tech supply. I love my job. I remember what my commodities were. I remember, working with, retired gunnies, but even there, when I wasn't when I was laughing on the phone, my boss, a retired gunny, thought I was flirting. So he said, "Donnie, we need to go to the warehouse. We're going here. We need to look at the lumber. We need to find the grade of the lumber. Look at the creosote. Let's look at the pneumatic tools. Let's look at this and that and that." So he didn't like me spending time away from my work, or I guess flirting with other people too. So I don't
Okay.
know, it happens, but yeah, but
Yeah.
I learned a lot from that job because I it's one of my favorite jobs that I had. I just remember my boss, he was so positive, and that's most things that I learned was I got raises at that job, which I really liked. I remember my at the time we were working, it was a warehouse and it was hot in there, and the windows were up at the top. I don't know if you remember those kind of things. And I remember one of my bosses, she come in with a tank top and biker shorts and boots to work, you know. What I remember about her is that she was loving and grateful, and she accepted you for who you are, and you know, it was awesome. And I had a gay friend. He and I would, when I was single, we would have crushes on the same guy. He goes, and he'd say, "Donnie, I got lucky last night." He put his arms up like this, and I laughed so hard, because that's that's the way he was. He just made things so light, and he made me just laugh so much. And you know, I met all kinds of people at Camp Pendleton, and I loved them all. And I, just knowing that, and knowing at that time there was a point in my life where I did have my younger son go live with his dad because I couldn't take care of him because he would 9 years old, he wouldn't stay in an apartment. And I was thinking to myself, well, duh. So I had to take him roommates, and I didn't like that either. But I did remember eating a pot of beans for a whole month and remembering how my gums would bleed. But I never asked money for my mom, never asked money for anybody, just ate the whole pot of beans like that, thought, what kind of person would I was? But I made do for what I had, and it's a learning experience for everything that I did. Having a roommate that wasn't faithful, having a roommate that tried to take advantage of you, having another roommate that didn't pay you rent, and so it was. I just ended up working 2, 3 jobs. That's what I did because I wanted us to survive. I didn't want us to go broke, and that's who I am. Um,
Yeah. A survivor who finds a way to see the positive. A survivor with gratitude. I love it. I love it. So you mentioned you talked about your son a lot, but when we first started this conversation, and you also stated even on your profile, you mentioned to me, what happened to your son?
um, he had a lot of anger growing up, and he would run away from home at 7, and he was at one time diagnosed bipolar, and he had to go to a mental institution, and I felt really bad about that, but I was backing him up all the way. My mom favored my oldest son to the youngest, and there's another history behind that as well. So my son would say to me, "Why doesn't grandma love me? Why doesn't she accept me for who I am?" Because they look entirely different. One looks Caucasian. In fact, one we lived in Tom Metzger land, KKK land, Fallbrook, and he thought my son thought he was an Asian. I said, "Look at me. Look, I'm your mom, full-blooded mom, and you're my son." Well, and he had his hair sprayed up here. So he goes, "Don't touch the hair." I was afraid I'd get my eye poked, or whatnot. But he learned a lot, that about this, that um he is a wonderful man. He was a wonderful man, still is. Both my sons, I was proud to say, they've only been married one time compared to their mom 4 times. And so they love the Lord. Um, I didn't know my son, Jeremy, had problems with anger. Um, I was told that so much by his wife. You can't see the forest for the trees kind of thing. It's like a mental health therapist, but I couldn't see how sad it was. You know, I remember um, my grandson said that, and my daughter-in-law said that he would have nightmares of my son yelling at him after he passed away, and so I feel the hurt from my grandson. Don't know how to reach him. I haven't talked to him in a couple of years, so it's hard. But I've gotten close to my older son, John. We talk a lot more than we did. He's my supporter as well as my husband and my sisters. Um, and I'm learning because I have ADHD, so I'm learning to space my conversations out. And if people can't follow my trains of thought, it's because it's going to another tributary, and my sisters can't follow. So I don't know what you said. There's no connection. The net. There's no connection. So, and I have to pace myself with my husband because I cross talk to him. I interrupt him, and I need to be mindful and let him speak. You know. So I'm learning a lot. It's later stage learning. It's a growth spurt for me. It's every day it's a new growth spurt. I'm learning new things, um, embracing my friends, embracing everybody, embracing who I know, and saying God bless you under your breath. Because I remember my mom saying, if somebody says to you um, that you're beautiful, remember to say God bless you under your breath, because every time they comment on you, you end up getting sick. So I don't know if that was a Hawaiian thing or what. I I don't know. It just kept
Yeah.
me going. So she taught me a lot of things at the Hawaiian ways because she grew up there, was born there. Um, Growing up and showed me where they lived and watched um, the ships go down in the harbor and how sad it was, and um, how they had to blacken their windows. And my grandmother would say to me, those were the bad Japanese. They're not good Japanese like us. And my my great uncle volunteered for the army, and he was mistreated. He couldn't go to the African Americans' bathroom, white bathroom. He couldn't go to white bathrooms. He was stabbed. A lot of racial things, even though they fought on the same side. And my uncle on my dad's side, also, he didn't mention anything about being abused or racist. But I think out of the five boys, because my dad had four brothers, only two of them were um, straight away from their wives. I mean, only three of them did, and my uncle and another uncle, who my dad said I wasn't his son, his daughter, that my uncle was my my dad. And so but that's another story. But I embraced everything because I embraced everything about the culture. I embraced, you know, I wish I had grown up in Hawaii at a later date so I would know time, so I would know more. But this is what I remember.
There's so much. We spoke earlier about, just about you really putting it all together in a book or something,
Yes,
because, even now, this is my recurring theme for this episode, is that even talking about your son and growing up and the racism which your uncles went through, you continue to talk about learning and growth and just continuing to get better. And I love it because I really feel like some people, this is one way to look at it, some people have more opportunities to quit and give up on life than other people. You have more traumas, more tragedies, more hardships, but it seems like for you, the there was always a predisposition for learning, for growth, to just figuring out what's going on, and you were able to do that while in survival mode for so long. And what I really want to tell you, what I'm really feeling, is just that I want you to be able to really to appreciate your effort. You put in so much work to survive, to be your best. You endured a lot, and you never gave up. You never gave up hope. You're still growing, you're still learning. And all of this is because you have this strength that you didn't know you had. And you've been relying on it since you were 5 years old or younger. And I feel like there's so many points in your story that truly you should be proud of. And for so many of us, we look at our results and then we don't give ourselves credit for our efforts. You don't give yourself credit for when you survive. You don't give yourself credit for choosing to be strong when giving up would have been so much easier. And I just feel like your journey, your effort, everything that you've been through really demonstrates how amazing you are. And if you can't see that, it doesn't make you less amazing. Like, you don't have to know your own strength for others to see how strong you are. And I just feel like through a lot of it, you couldn't feel it, you didn't identify it, but man, you've got this strength. You really do. You've got this strength, you've got this perseverance, this grit. And I appreciate you so much, just for giving us the example. Like, even anything that you've told me that you would say is difficult, you can't help but to turn it towards what you learned. And people that you've mentioned that have hurt you, you've mentioned what they did for you. You've mentioned how they were there for you. And it's, to me, it's really just about who you are as a person. And that's why I wanted you to come on here and I wanted you to just be yourself. And you say that you have ADHD and you go on tangents and this and that. And the truth is, every tangent you go on, you tell a different story that I can learn from. And so I appreciate all the tangents. I appreciate all the different ways the stories went, um, because they all have value. Every day of your life, you learn something of value. And every day of your life, you've had great value. And on your hardest days when you didn't feel like it, you still had value. You were still an example for somebody, an inspiration for somebody. And man, I don't know. I just feel like I really want you to know that you are appreciated and that you are admired. I just want to say that, and then put this on the internet so that other people can see me say that to you because you deserve it.
I appreciate you, Charleston, so much. You give me hope, encouragement, gratitude, and love, and I love that. And my sister wrote a book 2 years ago, and I can't remember, Shadows or something like that, through Amazon. I have to remember, but she talked about abuse and everything in her book as well, and how she's grown as well. We're 10 years apart.
Well, there's so many people, and I have a lot of friends because, first of all, I'll say this: either we've been abused or we know people who have been abused. So there's a lot of young people who don't know that their friends have been abused, right? They'll see the numbers. They'll see 1 out of 4 women were sexually assaulted before the age of 18. And they have 20 or 30, female friends, right? But they don't know who's been sexually assaulted. They don't know who's been abused, right? So we don't know who's been abused, but we're all impacted by it. And what happens for a lot of these young folks is they feel a certain type of way. They feel a similar emotion and have a similar perspective about themselves that you did when you were in your 20s. And they can sit there and think, what is my worth? What is my value? What do I have to offer? And you've already been there. And they can look at you and they can say, I can do it. She did it. I can do it. I can choose to look at the positive because Donnie looked at the positive. I can choose to learn through the situation because Donnie did. And so that's what I mean by that is a lot of people will go through things in their earlier years and they will wonder, what is it going to be like in the future? What does it mean? Like, can I still be strong? Can I provide value? Can I be encouraged? Can I have hope? And you answer those questions with yes. And I think that's so much of what we need these days. And so I'm appreciative of you being here and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Mm.
God bless you, my friend. Appreciate you so much. I learned through you and your eyes and your words, and the love that you share.
So, what I want to get into now is you've been through so much, right? And I'm gonna just kind of go through it real quick to
That's
kind of
fun.
set the stage for the next question. But I mean, you were abused as a child. Um, your brothers and sisters are abused, and there's different kind of ways of abuse, right? Emotional abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse. So not everybody endured all of it, but it was present, and you were aware of it. My mom was married a couple different times. Um, Father was an alcoholic. You lost your son. So many different things happened, and you've endured through it all. So now here we are, 2020, 2021 come around, and you have remained strong. You continue to press forward in your purpose and help people. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the positives that are going on right now for you in your work, in your relationships, your connections. Let's talk about the good life.
I think for me, God gives me a lot of hope. I mean, I should pray more, but God gives me hope. He knows what I'm feeling. He knows um, what I need to know. And I've shared this with a couple people, but I remember going to church and speaking in tongues twice and not knowing what I said, but they said I spoke in Hebrew. My grandson followed me, and I did that in Kauai, which my friend said she's never heard that before. And so that is something that resonates with me and learn about past lives. And some people may not believe it, but that gives me hope as to search also through my ancestry who I was. What was my family like back in the day? What was um, it's giving that back to the younger generation, and that you can do whatever you want to do. You just have to have a mindset. For me right now is making sure I stay focused with my ADHD, and also making sure that um, I finish one course at a time instead of taking 5 courses and can finish all of them, um, yeah, and so that's what I'm doing and studying for my exam, which has been frustrating for me because I remember taking the OnView and the computer didn't work out, but I never got a refund because the computer glitches, OnView. You have to be proctored by someone online, and that didn't work out for me. So now I have to study again and pay another fee and take the exam to be licensed. And that's been very frustrating for me because I've never not passed exam before that. Um, I passed my exam going through, master's program, also, going to my lower, um, like junior colleges and passing through that. And, but I still able to push through and even had a professor for the Ph.D. program. He was a psychologist, well known, president of the worldwide psychology program, who had said I wasn't the cream of the crop. And I thought, how can I move on from this? And he also wanted to, he'd say he would um, mentor me if he could move down to our house and I would do all his laundry for him and cook meals for him. I said no, and I reported him because that was it was abusive. Yeah, like I was his servant or whatnot. And to encompass that and report and say my truth is what I did, you know, and that wasn't right. Um, what also kept me going is staying in the mental health field and be supportive for the sexual assault groups and also domestic violence. And I taught domestic violence perpetrator training also, um, and also was a maternity support services manager and case manager and counselor in Yakima, and really loved my jobs. Been in the helping field. I guess I wanted to find out who I was and what I can do, and I persevered. And there are times that it makes me scared, but what I want to show everybody is no matter how old you are, you can learn. I'm 71 and I'm still learning. I earned my Crohn's stripes, by what I learned. I mean, you can call me auntie, you can call me, yeah, sister, whatnot. and I love it. I just love embrace all kinds of cultures and food. What can I learn more from everybody? Just feed me. I'm willing to learn. I'm hungry for knowledge. I'm hungry for what 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 were your goals? How did you pull through? What can I help you with? That kind of thing. And that's what my goal is, to help everybody if I can. I know I can't do it all, but
Well, let me ask you this. This is going to be his last question, and you can. It might be the last. You know how I am. I might think of
that's
something
okay.
else.
I was wondering if you have ADHD too. No.
But what I'm thinking is, what would you say to the young person in their 20s or early 30s who has endured trauma? They've endured, sexual assault. They've endured tragedy, and they're really hurting right now. What message would you have for that person?
I would say I'm giving you hugs right now. I'm giving you love. If I could put your heart in my pocket, I would. Because that's what I say to my kids and grandkids and my friends. I put your hearts in my pocket and take you wherever I go. What would you like me to say? I want to give you gratitude for being strong and being here today and present. Um, I want to give you, you know, hope. I want to give you, being so transparent, I want to give you whatever you need from me right now. And so I want to thank you, Mary Kay. Sorry. I, I, I want to give you hope and love, and you can do it all. You can do it all what you want to do if you focus and start moving forward. And sure, you're going to look back and say, what did I did that that I could have done better. But I think if I had not gone through those shifts, I don't think I would have learned a lot. It's like what Toffler would say, the paradigm shift, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, whatnot. You learn from every shift that I go through. I learn from every paradigm shift, and I'm learning a lot from people.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so Mary Kay is, I mean, she's a friend of mine. She's another amazing soul. And she made that comment. She actually commented that when you were talking about what that PhD professor was wanting you to come to his house. That's what she was commenting on, how unethical that was, and supporting you for standing up for yourself and saying no to that. So thank you, Mary Kay, for
Thank
just
you.
for your support on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't even imagine something like that. It's one of those things where it doesn't make sense to me. But I don't know. I just want to say, I appreciate you so much. I feel like we've only hit the tip of the iceberg on what you have
Yeah.
to offer. The thing about you is that I feel like you're one of those people that you just come up from a place of positivity and love, and we just need more of that. We need more Donnies in this world.
And I thank you. And I had shared with you, I wrote stories. I wrote about what my dog said. I write about what people said. And if I was somebody else, I wrote about Christian poems, and I put it in the library book of Congress, is what I saved it under. So, and I started thinking about these poems in the bathtub on the way to work when I was driving 2 hours a day. Um, that keeps me going, writing my story, telling my truth, what I want to offer to give everybody hope and love, and that you can do it. Don't let anybody tell you you can, because you can. And it's almost like the little train that couldn't. It's that little book, that thing that you can do always. And I also worked with, inmates at the prisons, and I learned a lot from them. I taught them to, kind of integrate back with the families in the homes, and it was such a wonderful experience for me.
I
Sorry to
love
keep
it
going
because
on.
that's what you do, though. Like, that's what you do with love, with hope, is you help others, you bring encouragement, you bring hope, you bring this mindset of learning, of being strong, of continue, just continue to fight, continue to just press forward. And I told you before that I just feel like you really represent what it means to persevere with hope and love. And not everybody knows how to do that. Not everybody knows where to start. And so that's the example that you provide. I'm so grateful for you. I think we're ready to wrap this up. And I just want to say, is there? Well, first of all, I just want to say to anyone watching, of course, you see at the bottom it talks to them about comment happy for more info about the Cultivating Happiness Masterclass. I am hosting a masterclass on March 12th at 4 p.m. If you'd like to know about that, you know,
Yes.
comment with the. Well, you and I can talk about that, Donnie.
Oh, sorry.
You and I will definitely talk about that. But for anyone watching that wants to connect with her, let me see her LinkedIn profile down there, LinkedIn/in/Donnette dash Martell. Um, and so with that said, I wanted to get that out there. And then I want to get to, as we close out, is there any last thing you'd like to say before we end this broadcast?
Thank you, Charleston, for letting me speak my story and give me the encouragement and love that I needed. Gratitude, and thank you for everyone who wants to listen, who listened to my story. I appreciate all of you. God bless you all, and stay positive. Share your kindness and gratitude, and be transparent. And don't be afraid to say that you have mental illness, because it happens. It happens. Life happens, but you can get through it. Don't keep things inside. Don't suck it up, like we learned to suck it up and share your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Donnie. It was great having you here. And to everyone who watched or anyone who's going to watch on the replay, thank you so much
Thank
for being
you.
a part of this. And we will see you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Carson.